Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about the issue of lawfare. We're going to talk about what's going on with Trump and the Biden team. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. I hope everybody can hear me. Everybody, make sure you let me know, and you guys let me know in the chat if the sound is good. I'm actually in my office and just slipped over into a conference room and figured I had a few minutes. I'm going to go on the Geopolitics in Conflict show with Dr. David Wallaloo at noon. Looking forward to that. All right, okay. Ryan Wagner, what's up, Ryan? Ryan says, sounds good to me. For me. Okay, thanks a lot, Ryan. Let's roll. I find the issue of Trump and Biden and lawfare very interesting right now because of the positions that people are taking, not based on justice, but based on who they like and who they don't like. Politics and the legal system in America have gotten to the point where it's no longer about justice. People don't care about justice. The only thing they care about is who they like and who they don't like. Right. I did an interview yesterday with someone who's brilliant, very brilliant person who, does a lot of good stuff, a lot of Assange stuff. And we discussed the Trump charges and potential charges. And we went over the potential charges for Trump. And towards the end of the interview, I was making the point that, hey, I'm not in favor of this business of going after Trump because it appears to me that it is unjust. It appears to me that they're going after Trump and they're letting the Biden people walk doing anything. To which the person said, yeah, there's no comparison. And I said, I agree, there is no comparison. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's look at this, at what's going on here. We have a investigation by John Durham. Don't get me wrong. Durham was a tool. John Durham, in my opinion, is part of the system. He was put there to do the best he could to hide the obvious, right? There's all this criminality going on, and he did his best to hide it, but he couldn't hide it all. He had to put some of it out there because it was in broad daylight. And one of the things that he found, one of the things that the Durham report found, although they missed like the most obvious, for obvious reasons, was that the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane, the whole Russiagate Trump investigation, was started with no legitimate predicate, right? Now, think about what that means. No legitimate predicate. The investigation was started, but what they found was you didn't have a legal reason, a legitimate reason, a reason that could be identified and substantially defended for going after Trump and starting that investigation. Okay, fine. But there had to be a second part of that Durham didn't cover. That is, if there was no legitimate predicate, that implies that there was an illegitimate predicate, which at that point means that if I find that you didn't have a legitimate reason for going after someone, shouldn't I start looking for the illegitimate reason? But Durham, that wasn't his job. So what we find is the FBI went after Trump for illegitimate reasons that the government refuses to delve into, because I think we all already know that. They didn't like his foreign policy. He wasn't a member of the team, and therefore he wasn't allowed to be president. And so they try to use lawfare to go after him, to do an investigation, to search everything they can. And that we found within the context of that investigation that there was illegalities going on, right? That a guy named Kevin Kleinsmith, one of the many, literally changed an email and sent it to the courts to get changed an email, completely changed it, that said change from does to does not, which is to reverse the meaning of the email, and then sent that to the courts, to the FISA court, the Foreign Investigation Service Act, whatever it was, the FISA court. So violated the law. This guy gets a slap on the wrist, basically. He didn't even get disbarred over it. But Bottom line is the investigation started against Trump with no legitimate predicate, and in the investigation, literal illegalities are done to go after Trump. They basically he found that they ran into stop sign after stop sign, and they just mashed on the gas and went through the stop sign. Every time they found a reason to stop the investigation, they kept going. Every time they looked for something and they didn't find what it was, they made something else and they kept going. It was clearly and obviously what's often called a witch hunt, right? It was a witch hunt against Trump. Okay. Durham also found in his investigation. So we have an illegitimate investigation against Trump in which illegalities were used to pursue Trump by the investigation. Durham then makes his finding, and this is the system finding that. Durham makes his finding that the government, the FBI, went after Trump for anything they could, no legitimate predicate, but he also finds that they had legitimate reasons to go after the Clintons, to go after the Democrats, and they didn't do it. So you've got them no legitimate predicate to go after Trump, and they went after him and violated the law while they were going after him to go after him. And every time they found a reason they should close the investigation down, they didn't close it down. They just kept going. Obviously a witch hunt. But when it came to Hillary Clinton, the emails, etc., they did nothing. They didn't go after anybody. They didn't go after anybody related, right? So there was obviously differential treatment. Now, why is, we could talk about why, that's another discussion, but the truth is there was differential treatment. Now, here's the issue that first of all, that's there, differential treatment. The first issue I have is this regarding that. Whether or not I like or don't like Trump, I approve of, I don't approve of Trump, I would vote for or wouldn't vote for Trump is irrelevant. See, and in America, because the parties have turned into cults, now the blue cult now doesn't care. They don't care whether or not it's just. They don't care whether it's differential treatment. They don't care whether it's a witch hunt. They only care about getting Trump. So they're perfectly happy to utilize the system to go after Trump, even though it's clearly and obviously he's being treated differently than the people they like. So their thing is this: if it's our person, we want to protect them, the system shouldn't go after them. If it's your person, we wanted the system to take them down. And they're so stupid that they never stop to think that one of these days you could like somebody that the system doesn't like, and they're going to do the same thing to go after your person. You have to maintain the purity and integrity of the system, right? The issue and here's the issue: rule of law. Because people say we live in a country where there's rule of law. There's no rule of law here. If there's rule of law, in fact, what we're finding is this: the people here don't even want rule of law, right? They don't want rule of law. What they want is arbitrary application of the law. They want to utilize the law to smite their enemies, right? That's it. What do you want the law for? To get Trump. Okay, your guy did something wrong. We got to protect our guy. That's terrible. Don't go after our guy. So we have people who are by their very nature have an a view of politics that reeks of injustice. So whether I like to, I make this conversation, and here's the key: I can have this conversation, and I can come out and say I don't think what's going on here is fair. And there are so many people in this country that will interpret that, well, you're a Trump supporter, you like Trump, which tells on them. I've taken a position regarding justice, regarding the law, regarding equal treatment under the law, regarding the foundation of the legal system. They interpret that based on their view of the world as whether or not I like or support a person. Because in their world, if your enemy is pursued by the government, the system, whoever, you should support that. If your comrade, if your team member is pursued by the government or the system, you should oppose that. It has nothing to do with whether or not they're guilty. It's, as I brought up in the past, it's like the blue line. It's like saying a police officer sees his partner beat somebody to death, illegally use brutality, use excessive force, and then they go in and they testify on behalf of their partner to try to get their partner off. They know their partner's wrong, but because we're cops, we got the blue line and we got to make sure that we look out for each other. It's the same mentality in politics. This is a member of my team. I don't care if they committed a crime. I got to look out for them. That's the mentality that has been put on people who are members of the parties now. Do you like this person? Do you not like this person? I want the system to go after this person. I don't want the system to go after that person. But now what we clearly see is this. Look at the Hunter Biden thing. What's going on now? Interesting about Hunter Biden. One of the things that I want to bring up that's obvious is this. Apparently the reason that the plea bargain of Hunter Biden was thrown out by the judge is because buried in the bowels of the agreement was a clause, at least apparently there was another one, but there was a clause that apparently said something to the effect of Hunter Biden, in accepting this plea deal, would be held immune against charges from any other investigations that are open against him now. Have you ever heard of such a thing? I was in law enforcement for years. I ran an investigation station. I dealt with many, many cases. I've never seen anything like that. I can't imagine any prosecutor that I'd ever deal with that would say, we've got this guy dead to rights for, mopery on the high seas. But we got some other investigations going on against him for murder, for all of the felonies, murder, Mr. and Mrs. Tam, right? Murder, rape. I used to teach this. Mr. and Mrs. Tam is murder, rape, sodomy, theft, arson, mayhem, burglary. That's how you know the felonies, right? Or Tam is theft, or you can say Mr. and Mrs. Lamb, L is larceny, right? But the bottom line is this. You got this guy for a violation of everything you could ever imagine, and you're investigating him for that. And I write up a clause that says, if he takes the plea deal for this spitting on the sidewalk charges, all the investigations we have for him for murder, rape, sodomy, theft, arson, mayhem, and burglary, he'll be held free and clear and immune for charges from any other investigations. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a prosecutor saying that? I can't, which means that it was a scam. That means that it was crooked, right? Okay, add this. Who else got that same deal? In case you didn't know, back in a couple years ago, there was a guy named Acosta. He worked for the Trump administration, and people came after him and said, we got a question for you, buddy. Why is it that you were involved in the Jeffrey Epstein deal in Florida when Epstein was found, guilty of doodling little kids? You were found guilty. He was found guilty, and he walked. He walked. And might I add, part of the plea deal that Jeffrey Epstein got said he can't be charged with anything else. That anything else we're looking into, anything else so he can't be charged. Bottom line is they wrote the same clause into Epstein in Florida. And this is a guy that's doing unthinkable things to little kids. So they could have found that he was doing all other stuff, but they wrote in a clause that says anything else that we find on you, you can walk for. That is not something that the prosecution would ever put in or approve of. That's something that the defense. Now, if the defense attorney, yeah, he should. The defense attorney should do everything he can. They should get a clause that says anything in the world that my client has any crime he's ever committed or any crime he ever will commit, immunity. Certainly, you're a defense attorney. You're supposed to ask that. But for the prosecutor to say yes, no, it's never supposed to happen. But who got that deal? Epstein got the deal. And Hunter Biden was about to get the deal, and the judge pulled it and said, oh, hell no, this ain't happening. But, and apparently the judge also asked, yeah, that's right, Paul Wolf says, call it the Epstein clause. But apparently the judge also said, well, are there other investigations going on against Hunter Biden? And the prosecutors refused to answer. Apparently the judge said, well, did Hunter Biden commit violations of FARA, Foreign Agent Registration Act? Prosecutors were quiet. They were so quiet, as my dad used to say, you could hear a rat piss on cotton. They had nothing to say. So the bottom line was, it's obvious that the prosecution was acting on behalf of the defendant. And do you ever see such a thing? The prosecution acted to ensure that Epstein would walk if there was other things. And they knew there were other things because they would be in charge of investigating. And the prosecution, in the case of Hunter Biden, acted to ensure that anything else they had on Hunter Biden, he'd walk on because they had a deal of immunity. And the judge said, what the hell Get out of here with this. Not happening. Not happening. That judge better watch his or her back. I think it's the woman better watch her back. That judge could slip and fall down an elevator shaft, whatever. Something tells me that when Hunter Biden comes back to court, he ain't gonna have the same judge. You'll have a judge from Delaware whose last name is Biden. Who do we have? We have Judge Smunter Biden. Smunter Biden? Who's that? It'll be like Biden. It'll be Joe Biden. He'll have on like a toupee and like a fake glasses and a beard. And he'll be pretending to be the judge. They're gonna play some kind of a stupid game. But it's obvious now that the system was out to protect Hunter Biden. But let's look at Trump. We got an investigation that went against on for years by the FBI that was started with no legitimate predicate, which means it was started with an illegitimate predicate that the government refused to look into. We got on and on and on. We've got Weiss and the Mueller investigation, in which Mueller and Weiss found that somewhere between 20 and 40,000 text messages were passed between Peter Strzok, who was the person who was leading the investigation against Trump, and a lawyer, his girlfriend, Paige, I think was her name. Mueller and Weiss deleted them. They found emails that could have been very valuable for all these investigations. And instead of looking at them and seeing where they led, they deleted them. As a former investigator, I can tell you that you should be at that point charged with destruction of evidence. Obviously, you're destroying evidence. There's a number of charges that could be found, but clearly, there's Valley S. Hey there, Valley S. Yes, you are visible today. From Ohio. How goes all in Ohio? So, bottom line, what we see is a situation where the government goes out of its way. Let me ask you this. Did they investigate the Clinton Foundation? Did they come up with a special prosecutor for the Clinton Foundation? They got some like special prosecutor or investigator looking into Trump for January 6th. And when I look at it, I look at it and I'm like, I saw a video of Donald Trump saying, let's peacefully go down to the Capitol. I'm not saying he's a good guy, bad guy, right or wrong, but I'm saying, to me, how you going to convict a person on saying let's cause mayhem and what have you, when he literally gets on the microphone talking to everybody and says, hey man, let's peacefully meander over to the Capitol. And then you're going to say, oh, he pushed for an insurrection, which again, the idea that that's an insurrection, I'll put it like this. Look into the Maidan coup. The United States knows how to do insurrections. We know how to overthrow governments. We do it all the time. John Bolton bragged about trying to overthrow the government of Venezuela. So the idea that a bunch of schleps wandering around in funny outfits and clown suits, who were literally let in by the government. They opened the door, but the police opened the door, allowed them in. They wandered around. People who ask, hey, where's Nancy Pelosi's office? And the police were like, oh yeah, just go right down there on the left a little bit, make a left. Here, let's get a selfie. Click. That's an insurrection is preposterous to me. To me, it's preposterous that that was an attempted insurrection. And that they attacked our democracy. I don't believe we have a democracy. I don't believe that we're choosing the president. I could go after instance where actions were taken by either the deep state or any particular individual party, in some instances, to thwart their own candidate. Ask Hubert Humphrey about that, right? An anti-war candidate back then. Wasn't happening. The Democratic Party stomped him out. So bottom line is this. Ask Jimmy Carter, Reagan, and the CIA, what they did when it comes to the Iran-Contra. I mean, there were just so many instances where there was actions taken to affect the election, particularly the presidential election, that it's very, very obvious that our government thinks nothing of interfering with an election. So the idea that that was an insurrection, to me, is preposterous. And that the Clinton campaign acted, there were many actions taken to interfere with the 2016 election by the Clinton campaign. The 2020 election, the FBI clearly took actions to interfere with the 2020 election. So the idea that you're going after Trump for an election interference is preposterous to me. The FBI literally had Hunter Biden's laptop. You've probably heard me say this before. They looked at it and they knew Hunter Biden was dirty. And they had a guy come to them from Burisma, one of the principals of the Burisma company, and say, Biden's dirty. He did X, Y, Z. They had a laptop with the email to corroborate what those guys did. So the FBI had the goods on Joe Biden prior to the 2020 election. They had a duty to investigate that. And instead, they went to the social media companies and the news and said, oh, no, this is Russian propaganda. When they knew it wasn't, they knew it was a lie. They intentionally lied and intentionally interfered with the election. And they're going to charge Trump with interfering with an election? It is ridiculous to me. It is absurd to me. And it is mostly, then this is the part that I say, it's unjust. And here's what I say about justice. You know, the ACLU, I used to, people know me, I was a member of the ACLU for years and ended up on the National Board of Directors and ended up resigning in protest because I don't like what the ACLU has become, right? But the reason that I initially joined the ACLU is because I believe in justice. I believe right now, if a person goes out and, you know, is accused of murdering 10 people, beating them, kidnapping, doing all the things that I think are horrible, right? Okay, they're accused of all these things, but we have a system. The system says they have Miranda rights. There's Esposito right to, which is a case, Esposito v. Florida, which is the right to a lawyer, you know, on and on and on. There are numerous rights that they have, right? Now, the person has been accused of a horrible crime. My position is this. It doesn't matter what they've been accused of. We have certain rights that are considered due process, and they must be afforded due process. And if you don't afford them due process, the things that violated due process are not admissible in court. In some instances, you might have to let them go because everything's not admissible in court. But if you are the system and you don't want that to happen, you must adhere to the law. You must adhere to due process. In order to have rule of law, we have a process. You must adhere to that process. And that's why I came on. I don't care if you remember the KKK. I don't care if you're a Nazi member. I don't care who you are. If you're accused of a crime, we have a particular process that must be adhered to. And so I believe in that process. The process should only be adhered to for people that I like. And it doesn't matter if people that I don't like, doesn't matter, just go after them. I don't believe in that. Because you don't have a system then. You just have anarchy. You have madness. What you actually have is you have a government and a system where the wealthy and the powerful have one system of law, and those of us who are not liked by the system or outsiders have a totally different system of law. And that's what we have. What is it called? What's the term for that? When the government goes after people and uses the law to take out its enemies, the term is lawfare. It's lawfare. That's what's going on. Clearly, Paul Wolf says if the process doesn't work, none of us are safe. But let's take this in a little different direction, Paul. If the process isn't used and adhered to, and the people that don't adhere to the process face no accountability, right? One of the things that I worked for with the ACLU was police accountability, right? It was, hey man, if a cop violates the law, he should be held accountable. If he does something he shouldn't be held accountable. Same as you, same as me, everybody, police accountability. If they do something wrong, they violate the law, they do whatever it is. Hey, I'm not saying they shouldn't, they should get special privilege. I'm not saying that you should go after more than anybody else. I'm saying we should have one system of law, and there should be accountable regardless of whether you're a policeman, a member of Congress, or a homeless person. We need a system where everybody gets the same process. That's what I believe in, right? But unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing here. And even to me, even more unfortunately, that's not what Americans want anymore. Now, I can't speak I will say this, probably most parties, but right now the Democratic Party, yes, Valley-S is right, equal justice under the law. That is a constitutional requirement. So right now, let me give you an example. A lot of people may not know this. What was it in New York? The woman who sued Trump and claimed sexual assault, right? Well, what happened with that? So she claimed Donald Trump committed sexual assault X amount of years ago. Well, the statute of limitations had expired, which meant she couldn't go after Donald Trump. which meant she couldn't sue him. She couldn't take him. Now, this is not a criminal case. This is a civil case. You sue somebody for money. And in a civil case, see, in a criminal case, the a standard that's required is for a conviction is beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. In a civil case, the term that's used for a finding is a what's the term? A preponderance of the evidence. 5149, right? It's more likely than not that the person did it. That's all you need, a preponderance of the evidence, right? Okay. Well, the problem that this woman had, E. Jean Carroll, was she couldn't sue Trump anyway, because there was the statute of limitations was over. So what did the state of New York do? The legislature of New York goes in session and they pass a law. And that law says for a 1-year period, if the statute of limitations is up for sexual assault cases, you can have a 1-year period where you can sue them. So they reopened the statute of limitations for 1 year for specifically the kind of cases that this woman wanted to do against Trump. She was instrumental in pushing that through. As soon as it went through, she goes right to the court and files her case. Now, to this point, I've looked, maybe there is, I can't find another person that did it. Maybe somebody else did. So the bottom line is this: the state of New York passed a law specifically so this one person could sue Donald Trump. As soon as they did it, she sued Donald Trump, and there was a finding that he lost, right? So the bottom line is, this was government lawfare, in my opinion. The law said you can't go after Garland. And so they said, well, we'll just pass a law that says you can go after Garland. The statute of limitations is up. Well, we'll pass a law to reopen the statute of limitations. But when it comes to the Clintons, when it comes to the Bidens, literally the prosecutor is writes a clause that says not only is Hunter Biden off the hook for this, anything we're investigating him for right now, he can walk. And when the judge basically said, what else are you investigating him for? We ain't telling you that. So you're expecting the judge to sign off and say anything that we're investigating him for, he walks, he's immune. And you're not going to tell the judge what you're investigating him for. You could be just investigating him for rape, for, as I said, for Mr. and Mrs. Tam, all of the felonies: murder, rape, sodomy, theft, arson, mayhem, and burglary. We're investigating him for all of those. Oh, really? And just sign off right here, judge, and any of those that he did, or maybe all of those that he did, he can walk. Now, remember, we're talking Hunter Biden. We're talking a guy that has a very serious drug problem, unfortunately. We're talking to a guy who's got kids who, whether he's paying for, he's got this kid by a stripper, we don't know. God only knows. Look, it's Hunter Biden. God only knows what this guy's up to. But they wanted to let him walk without even telling the judge what they were investigating him for. How sweet is that? Who could get that? I'd love it. I'd love if they say right now, Garland, if you'll plead guilty to a traffic ticket, right? And I'm like, I didn't violate the law. I haven't even driven today, whatever, right? But Garland, if you'll plead guilty to this traffic ticket, anything the government's looking into you for right now, you're immune. I take that. Because I don't know what they're investigating me for. I'm not doing anything illegal, but that don't mean they won't investigate me, as I said, it's said, right? And when I say I'm not doing anything illegal, keep in mind also this. There's a guy, look it up, who did, I think it was a book, I know it was on YouTube, called 3 Felonies a Day. A lot of people may be familiar with it. And what he said was, there's so many rules, there's so many laws out here that most Americans commit an average of 3 felonies a day. So even though I don't know I have no idea, I could have probably inadvertently committed some crimes. I mean, I jaywalked this morning. I got off the underground here in DC, got off the subway, walked up to the corner of 17th Street and K, and looked, and there was like no cars anywhere. I just walked right across the street. There's nobody with that. I do that all the time on 17th. There's nobody. It's a side street, right? I'll do that frequently. Bottom line is this. They could come get me for that, for all I know. Hey, we've got video of Garland jaywalking. Boom, there's one. They could be looking at me for anything. and just make something up or find some inadvertent crime that I had no idea that I committed, right? Years ago, who knows what, and just say, hey, we're going to take you down. So if somebody said, sign this, you'll be guilty of jaywalking, and anything else you're being investigated for, you're immune, I'd sign the damn thing in a second because I don't know what they're investigating me for. So who's not going to? That is the best deal. I would advise anybody right now, if they came to you and gave you that plea bargain for something minor, take it, because you never know what they're investigating you for. Best deal in the world. But when it comes to Donald Trump, they investigated him in New York and they charged him with election interference, but with violation of election rules. But the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, had looked into the Stormy Daniels thing and decided not to charge. So the FEC looks at it and says, yeah, he paid off. He had something going on with Stormy Daniels. He paid her $130,000, and she walked and he walked, right? And did he pay her so she wouldn't tell anybody and it would interfere with the election? Nah, it's a bit of a stretch, right? Here's what I said, because I asked, my position is this. As I understand that particular statute, they're going to have to prove that he specifically paid Stormy Daniels off so that she wouldn't spill the beans and that wouldn't affect the election, right? That specifically that's why he did it. But all he has to, if you're defending him, what are you going to do? If you're defending Trump and you go into a judge before a judge, what are you going to say to the judge? Hey, what are you going to say to the jury? Hey, Trump did that specifically. He did that specifically so that he wouldn't. They're going to say so that to affect the election, to affect the outcome of the election. And any lawyer worth his salt is going to say, Your Honor, absolutely not. He was embarrassed. The man is married. There's his wife sitting next to him. He, acted in a manner that he's, sorry for, and he was afraid his wife was going to find out. So he paid her off to keep her mouth shut. Yes, he did that. I'm sorry. It's probably not the right thing to do. He had a moral failure, blah, blah, blah. However, it had nothing to do with the election. He just didn't want his wife to find out. I'm sure people here can understand that. And we may all agree that it's wrong and he shouldn't have done it, but we, understand that, hey, that's probably the reason he did it. Not judging, not saying it wasn't wrong, just saying that was my client's reason. That, hey, he didn't want his wife to find out. It had nothing to do with the election. That was the least of his problems at that time. He didn't want his wife to clunk him over the head with a bowling trophy when he got home. I hope you understand, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. If I'm sitting on that jury, he walks. If I'm sitting on that jury, I'm like, yeah, I kind of understand. I guess, who's going to push back on that? The guy was messing around on the side of the old lady, and he was rich, and he paid somebody off to keep their mouth shut so his old lady wouldn't fight. Get out of here. Yeah. Okay. Hey, not approving it. Just saying, if you're trying to convince me that wasn't why, you ain't convincing me of that. Clunk. Forget it. Not guilty. Who wouldn't make that finding? Who would look at that and say, I don't think it's at all possible that's why he did it. Sure, who wouldn't do that? If he wasn't married, if he had a girlfriend, who wouldn't say, if a guy said, hey, why'd you pay off this strip porn star on the side that you were, hobbling with? Why'd you pay her off? And some guy's like, hey, I don't want my girlfriend to find out. And you're on a jury. What are you going to say? Yeah, okay, I can believe that. You might have hit him at the elbow. Jackass, you got a nice girl here. Why are you screwing around on her? Get your act together. You're lucky she didn't leave you, right? You might say that to him. You might hit him with an elbow, whatever the case may be. But what you're not going to say is, no, I don't believe that. There's no possibility that that's true. Right? It's quite possible, and one would argue likely that that's why he did it. I'll put it like that. If I'm sitting on the jury, I'm going to make that finding, and it's not an unreasonable finding. That being said, keep in mind something. The FEC must have thought like that. The Federal Election Commission refused to charge, but the local New York prosecutor said, I will charge him with what the FEC, well, they didn't charge him, but I will. So now the local prosecutor in New York is speaking for the FEC, the same New York that literally changed the law so that Donald Trump could be sued. It looks to me like in New York, shocking, the bluest of blue states. It looks to me like New York has decided we're going to do everything we can to take Trump out. I don't think that's right. It doesn't matter whether I like or don't like Trump, whether I'm in favor or not in favor of Trump. Hillary Clinton, look at what happened with their servers. They didn't investigate that. They're going to literally they're going to charge Trump for um, having um, documents that were classified. Hillary Clinton had a server full of documents, and when the courts told them, to preserve the documents, they deleted 33,000 emails. They found classified emails, and Clinton said, "No, no, we didn't have any classified emails." She lied in front of Congress. Oh, we had no. What are you talking about? There wasn't a single classified email. Don't know what you were talking about. They looked and they found classified emails, highly classified emails. Remember Anthony Weiner, her assistant, I forgot whatever her name was, husband, right? On his laptop, there was classified emails that had come through the Clinton server. So they put up an illegal server. They putting classified documents on that server. Just doing that was in itself a violation of the law. And then they spread around all over the place. And then, I mean, there were so many violations of the law with the Clintons, with the servers, that it's unfathomable that there was no charges brought, but they weren't, because that ain't what they do. They didn't say we need a special prosecutor to look nonstop and to search everything the Clinton and to look into the Clinton Foundation. You remember when emails came out? And these emails came out that basically said that there were people in the Middle East, there were powerful, wealthy people in the Middle East, who one of them was somebody who contributed $12,000 to the Clinton Foundation. And at that time, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. They gave that money to the Clinton Foundation and then said, "Can you get me a phone call with Hillary?" And Hillary's people were like, "Yeah, we can." And they got a phone call with Hillary. So you had people who, Huma, whatever her name was, but you had people who were literally paying money to the Clinton Foundation to get a phone call or a meeting with Hillary. So no wonder they can't go after the Bidens, because that's not the Joe Biden game. That's the game. That's the Hillary game. That's the game. That's the Biden game. That's the game. So they can't look in the Clintons or the Bidens or whoever, because that's the way they play it. That's the way they all play it. That's it. It's pure corruption. And so when I look at Hillary and the refusal to investigate her, when I look at Hunter and Joe, and now, the dirt that's coming out on Hunter and Joe. Well, first of all, without an investigator, what they call OSINT, open source intelligence, right? The open source crap that you can find out about the Bidens, you could literally charge them off of that. Now, add this. They started an investigation against Trump, according to Durham, according to his findings, with no legitimate predicate for starting the investigation. Meanwhile, some guy comes to the FBI and he says to the FBI, the Bidens coerced us and into a bribe, and we paid him off. As the president, we paid Hunter, we paid $7 million to Hunter, $5 million to Hunter, $5 million to Joe. They coerced us. We didn't want to pay him. We paid him off. As a result of that, Joe Biden used his power as the vice president of the United States to get an investigation stopped against the head of this company. Bribery, right? Joe, if you have that, you also have Joe Biden himself saying, I got the guy fired who was investigating my son's company. He admitting to that. So you have a whistleblower saying they squeezed us for 10 million to get the guys fired. The guy fired, his name was Victor Shokin, and they squeezed us. We gave him 10 million. They fired Shokin. You got audio video recording of Biden saying, we fired Victor Shokin. We told them they weren't getting $1 billion loan unless they fired Shokin, so we got Shokin fired. You got emails. You got WhatsApp messages from Hunter Biden where he literally says, hey, my dad's sitting right next to me, and if you don't give me what I want, we'll never forget. Basically, if you don't, my dad's sitting next to me, it was mafia, right? My dad said, did you see you all should look up the WhatsApp, search that, a WhatsApp message for Hunter Biden, where he basically is talking to somebody on the phone, some foreigner, and he says, hey, my dad's in the room with me. And if you don't give us what we want, We got a long memory. I'm paraphrasing. And my dad will use everything he's got to make sure your ass is grass. Now I'm paraphrasing, but that's my interpretation of what he said. Go look at it and read it yourself, right? So you got a whistleblower saying that he fired Shokin and we gave him 10 million and they squeezed us out of it. It was a bribe. You got Biden saying we fired Shokin. You got emails left and right on the laptop where they literally say, "Hey man, we hired Hunter Biden so that Joe Biden could use his power to get us out of this mess. We're being the government's after us for criminal activity." So you have the clearest bribery case you could ever imagine, and instead of investigating it, the FBI covered it up prior to the election, which is election interference, and did everything they could to go after the people and censor the people and attack the people who were trying to expose what they knew was true, and they called it Russian disinformation. What a disaster this is. And people look at me and they say, "Well, Garland, what are you, some kind of a Trump lover, Trump supporter?" Because they can't conceive that a person would say, "Look, I just want justice. It does not matter if I like or don't like Trump. It doesn't matter." Injustice, Martin Luther King talked about it, right? Injustice against anybody is injustice against everyone. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. What does that mean? That means that in order to have rule of law, in order for everybody to be treated the same, for everybody to have the same opportunity to defend themselves as in a court of law, you must have a consistent set of standards. Number one, that are adhered to. Number two, that there is a level of accountability so that those who don't adhere to those standards pay a price for adhering to those standards. And what do? What do you get here? You get the opposite. I do not agree with that. I can't agree with that. I cannot accept it. This is lawfare, and I think I've stated my case. So let me just look over here before we get ready to go, because I got things to do. I'm in my office. I got things to do in my office, big things going on. So I got to run, but I did want to, we got 42 minutes. There we go. That's plenty long. Jeffrey Lang, thanks a lot, Jeffrey Lang. Jeffrey just says, "Garland, certainly appreciate it." Sparky, who's always on the ball, "Make Ukraine Russia again." How about we go to Joel? Thanks a lot, Joel. That's close as I can come when all of the letters start sticking together. How about we go to Sparky says, "There once was a time a judge would be deeply offended if a defense attorney pretended to be prosecution in order to fool the court clerk." Yeah, I know when that was. Sparky says, "Build a better world with bricks." Sparky is always on top of things here. Anything else? Sparky is in his house. "Difficult to trust any U.S. lawyer to look out for their client's best interest nowadays. Remember, General Flynn's lawyers sold him out. Lawyers are mostly on the establishment team in the USA." Yeah, you got to watch it. There's something else has come out where apparently one of the prosecutors who was allegedly going after Hunter Biden had sent Hunter Biden an email that was found on Hunter Biden's laptop, and it said, like, "I'm traveling to such and such." This is a prosecutor who's looking into Hunter Biden, and they ended the email to Hunter Biden with, "Love ya, brother." This is a prosecutor who's looking into Hunter Biden, ended an email with, "Love ya, brother." Sure, and you wonder why they're doing everything they can. "Love you, brother." I got a feeling Trump ain't getting no emails that says "love you, brother," and neither are you and I. Maybe not being able to trust lawyers to look out for their clients extends around the globe. Did Assange always have trustworthy representation? There's been some questions there. Valley S, yay, Valley S says, "Oh, thanks a lot, Valley S. Certainly appreciate that." What else do we got? Did we miss any? Analysts are on Rockfin. And on Rockfin, no Rockfin notes. That's all right. Well, that's that, everyone. Thanks a lot. I'm out of here. Let me remind you, I will be on the Geopolitics and Conflict show at noon. Additionally, please, if you can, make sure you smash the like button. Make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Additionally, if you can afford it, we got Patreon, we got PayPal, We got Cash App, and certainly buy me a coffee. A lot of people like doing buy me a coffee. It's easy. It just says buy Garland a coffee, $5. How many coffees do you want to buy? That's easy. And just like Patreon now on Buy Me a Coffee, you can say, hey, I want to do a monthly of $5 or whatever the hell you want. So anyone who can do that, thank you very much. Last but not least, I'm on rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. It is a great alternative platform. It does not in any way, shape, or form censor. So Rockfin's great. Please go over to my Rockfin channel and become a member there. It doesn't cost anything. And if they throw me off YouTube, or if you want to watch Rockfin, you can. It doesn't have advertisements, doesn't cost anything. It's great. However, they got to eat over at Rockfin, right? They got to stay on. And how do they stay on? How do they stay on the air? How do they keep going? They allow subscriptions. A subscription, if you can afford it, would appreciate it. $14.99 a month. And if you sign up for a year, they give you a couple months free. So it's like $12.40 a month. So if you can afford to support the channel on Rockfin, I would certainly appreciate it if you become a subscriber. If you don't become a subscriber, hey, that's okay. Just share this on all your social media platforms. Thank you very much, everybody. Peace. I'm out.